and welcome to this very special introductory mini episode of the Painted Podcast. My name is Marie St. Sandy. I am a Glasgow-based drag artist. I've been doing drag for about 8 years, and I will be the host of this series. So, this podcast is directly linked to my makeover series called Painted by Marie. Painted by Marie is a series where I put other artists in drag to look like me, essentially. If any of you know me, which I'm assuming you must do if you're listening, you will know that I have a squiggly signature drag face. And what I do in this series, obviously, is put people in that and do a series of photographs, TikToks, and this year we have got a podcast. So I'm going to talk a little bit in this episode about the series, about how it's grown. A lot of this is stuff that I will have spoken about at my launch event on the 10th of November. So let's get started. So Painted by Marie started in 2022. It would have been around October, something like that, probably around Halloween time. And what happened was one of my work colleagues was wanting to do drag at the time. And I said to him, well, why don't you come round to mine and I'll put you in drag to look like me. We'll do a little photo shoot. The two of us will be kind of twinning vibes. So he did. He came round, and the thing that kind of struck me immediately was, despite the fact that me and this colleague, we look absolutely nothing alike. Out of drag, like nothing alike. We don't have similar faces. We don't have even no resemblance at all. But in the makeup, we looked almost identical. If it weren't for my mustache, like you wouldn't have been able to tell us apart, essentially. And that made me realize just how branded my face was. You know, that I could put it on someone that doesn't look like me, and you would still recognize it as me, or even confuse that person for me. And it got me very, very curious about how many different faces I could work on, how many different people I could do it on. So I contacted another person, and then another person, and then another person, and I would sort of just post as I went along essentially until I got tired and it was approaching Christmas time. But I suppose the key central theme of Painted by Marie in its kind of original form was this idea of duplication or cloning, or, you know, transferring my face onto somebody else and creating these, like, as I say, duplicates, clones, twins, whatever you want it to be. Everything was very, very homogenous as well. Even the way the photos were shot, everything was shot kind of in a spotlight or on a white background. There was absolutely no variation. And truth be told, it was just sort of a happy accident. You know, it just grew arms and legs, and people seemed to really, really like it. For me, it was very good because it allowed me to work with people on my own terms. If I could describe myself very simply, it would be introverted to the core. I don't really do well in big groups or like big busy social settings. I'm a much better one-on-one. And what Painted by Marie allowed me to do was to work with artists that I really liked, get to know people that I liked a little bit more, and to just have that time one-on-one with them and just shoot something fun. And as well, I mean, I was getting quite complacent with my makeup at the time. You know, I thought like, oh, I've developed this squiggly face, I've got it down. I was getting kind of complacent and just a little bit bored. And I was like, I need a challenge. Every single face that I painted, I painted such a variety of face shapes that I was like, this is such a challenge. And what it ended up doing was making my own makeup a lot better. The thing is as well is that I also had like a huge complex around my face as well. And I've always had that. I've always sort of thought like, my face is so plain. It's so like inoffensive. That's what I always thought. And I was like, I have such a boring face and I don't have any model-esque features. But what the series taught me actually was actually just how advantageous my face was in the end, and how perfect my face was for what I wanted to do. And it was, yeah, almost like as it was a mini form of therapy in that sense. But after finishing the series, I remember saying, I'm going to do this again. It's really, really fun. And I was like, I'm going to make it a yearly event. And it got interest from people as well. There were people contacting me asking to be painted. So that's when I knew there was sort of an appetite for it. So anyway, just under a year had passed by, and I was like, right, let's do this again. And that brings us on to Painted by Marie 2, which was released in 2023, so last year. Um, what my main sort of thing with this one was, I wanted it to be more of a production, in the sense that I wanted to produce the entire series first before I did any kind of promotion, because I wanted to get people excited. I wanted to tease people with it, and I wanted people to sort of speculate as well about who was involved. And I mean, it worked. I was happy with the results. Earlier in that year as well, I had bought a projector for an audiovisual show that I'd done in the summer, and the projector now has sort of become synonymous with my branding. I shoot I shoot pretty much all of my makeup looks in front of a projector. Um, for me, it just allows for a very immersive photograph that takes place in a different world. And I wanted a collection of looks on projection backgrounds that were all completely different but still fairly homogeneous, so that they all looked like part of a set. Um, I said obviously that the theme, the quote unquote theme for the first year of Painted by Marie was, I suppose, cloning or twinning or duplication. This second year, it was actually about hybridization. So it was about merging my style with the other artist's style. And you can really see that in, say, for example, the photo shoot I did with Bada Draga, Nonna, Azura Saint as well. I think is the one with Azura Saint captures that particularly well because she has so many little signatures to her makeup. In fact, when I did the photo shoot with Azura Saint, we were both stood looking in the mirror, and she was saying to me, I feel like me, but I feel like you as well. And I was like the same. I was like, I do feel very much like I'm like it's my makeup, but it feels like I still feel like a different queen right now. And it was really, really interesting. And I suppose at the time I thought as well that, doing this series like that with that hybrid element, it was giving the artists a good platform as well to sort of show themselves. But it wasn't until afterwards that I started thinking mm, obviously all of these people have come to be painted like me and everything like that, but I didn't feel as though that I was showing enough of the artists themselves or letting the artists make use of the platform. And that brings us on to this new series that's about to come out. So, my relationship with drag this year has changed a lot. Um, I have become very preoccupied actually with other things in my life. I started going to therapy. I started I met my partner as well. I have started dieting a little bit better, exercising, and just really, really focusing on keeping myself healthy and keeping, my mind ticking over in a healthy way. And I said to myself, I'm not going to do drag for the sake of it this year. I'm not going to do any gigs for the sake of it this year. This can all wait until I figure some stuff out, essentially. But anything I do has to be, my favorite piece of work to date until I think of the next thing, essentially. Um, so it's been a very, very quiet year. But as well, I've been sort of looking to shift my audience over a little bit. I've been operating in the drag scene for 8 years, and I have enjoyed it. There's been ups, there's been some really low points for me as well. Um, and I thought, I feel like there's so much more for me to explore right now. And I feel like there's a whole new audience waiting for me that aren't seeing me quite yet. So throughout the year, I've sort of set about trying to identify who that is, and then thinking how can I incorporate them into this series. So for the past 2 years, everybody that I have painted has been fellow drag artists. They've all just been drag queens. This year, I have expanded out a little bit. I've got a couple of DJs in there. I have got a couple of musicians in there. I have got people who are involved more in kind of the ballroom scene, and I've got people that they do drag in different capacities as well. So I suppose sort of extending that out a little bit and just changing the definition of the series a little bit is sort of, it's been like a new creative thing. Um, as well, a very conscious decision that I made about this new series of Painted by Marie was that I was not going to appear in it. So for the past 2 years, I've always modelled with the person that I've painted to show off that resemblance that we have. The the thing is, it's like I'm at a point in my career now where I feel like if you're looking at this series, you will already know what I look like. Well, you should, well, potentially. um, so I thought, well, that resemblance, when I'm painting somebody, that resemblance is implied. But the thing is, as well, was that I wanted to just take the spotlight off of me for a little bit. I didn't want to interfere with the makeup that I had done on the other artist. And as well, there was just a practical element to it. Like, you know, if I'm painting another artist and I'm modeling with them, then we have to have some sort of outfit. We have to have outfits and hair that all kind of match. So we're having to look through our wardrobe, and then that really severely limits our options. And then I'm having to end up going and buying things that sort of resemble what other artists have. And it's just a whole faff. And it's very, very time consuming to put myself in drag and then put another person in drag, do the shoot, and then take all the makeup off. I figured the time that I would spend painting myself would be better used on a podcast as well. Um, so lots of reasons why I didn't want to appear in it this year, but I think in terms of core values, it was to really emphasize the artists that have come and taken part in this. Um, that is another key thing as well with the podcast, because I felt as though I wasn't giving artists enough of a platform, or allowing artists to use the platform that I have with my previous work. I said I want to hear what these artists have got to say. I want to hear how are people working? What are people working on? You know, how do people create? What do people believe in as well? What is this creative consciousness we have amongst queer artists in Scotland? I was very curious about that, and doing this podcast for me was a way of finding that out. And there are so many great things that we've discussed, you know, with all the artists on the podcast. You know, we've had conversations about, obviously, artistry, we've had conversations about influences. We've spoken as well about other things like mental health. We've spoken about music. We've spoken a little bit about politics as well. We've also covered things like racism and depression. There's so many different things have come through these conversations. And every one of these conversations has felt very, very natural. And I think each episode is very, very distinct because every artist that I've cast is very, very distinct. I spent a lot of time thinking about who I wanted on it this year and who was out there doing something that I wanted to platform, or who I thought deserved a platform. You've got a mix of people who have been around for years, and you've got people that are literally, they are fresh, they are brand new to whatever it is they're doing. So I really, really hope that everybody involved was able to, you know, say their piece, and I hope that that gets heard as well, because I really, really believe in everything that these artists have to offer, and I've really, really enjoyed having these conversations with them. So, moving on, I suppose, onto the structure of the series. In terms of posting, it'll be one post a week. You'll get you'll get a couple of Instagram posts, you'll get the reel, the podcast will come out on the same day. It'll most likely come out at midnight, actually. I'll see if I can schedule it. Um, and it'll be broadcast quote unquote, in two parts. So you'll get five of these makeovers before in November until mid-December. Then I'll take a 2 week break for the festive period for Christmas and New Year. And then in the second week of January, you'll get the rest of the makeovers. I've still got one more person to paint at the time of recording this. So I'm aiming for five and five, but at the time of recording I've painted nine people. Um so it's shaping up beautifully. It's interesting to look at it as well, because every shoot is completely different. It's it's not quite as homogenous as last year's one. There's a lot more variation in it, which is interesting, but it's because each artist has brought something completely different. And I've really let the artists sort of guide the visual look of the series as well. They're telling me what kind of vibe they're going to bring, and then I'm developing visuals based on that. And as a result, you've got something that's very free. Um, I've also used a lot of AI to develop these backdrops. In fact, there's probably about a 50-50 split. Half of the backdrops were created using AI, and then the other half were created just by me. So there's been really kind of interesting processes at play here. As well, in terms of the faces, the makeup I've done on people, there are a lot more experimental looks this year. A lot of the time I would just paint people in the kind of standard Marie mug, but this year we have a lot of wacky colours and different eye shapes and things like that. So it's definitely shaping up to be the most unique series of it so far. Um, I want people to sort of maybe consider this a soft reboot, with the podcast and with my approach to it all, but it is also still very much my third year of doing this. And I found it very, very inspiring. I've learned so much. I always feel like I learn a lot from this series. And I'm honestly so, so excited to share it. So, yeah, I think that wraps up this episode of the podcast. And I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to see what you all think of this new series. Please don't forget to, share it, like it, support it, comment, everything. I really, really want this to do well, because it's just been such a passion project of mine, and I feel really, really strongly about it. So, yeah. That's everything from me. You can follow me on Instagram, at Marie Saint Sandy, the same on TikTok, same on Twitter, where you can keep up to date with the whole series. You can see all of the looks and all my other content. You can go and look at the previous years as well. And yes, I will see you all in the next episode, where I will be interviewing my very first special guest. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.